Welcome to the story world.
It is a tale from long ago. In a village within a magnificent mansion lived a landlord named Arthur. Situated at the edge of the forest, he possessed a vast garden where the fragrance of colorful flowers lingered throughout the day. This garden was home to rare plants, varieties that bloomed only under the light of the moon. People would travel from far-flung regions just to behold this lush greenery. The very soul of this garden was Banbay. Banbay was an exceptionally hard-working and devoted gardener. He loved the plants as if they were his own children. He would rise at 4 o'clock in the morning and immediately begin tending to the plants. If a bud showed even the slightest sign of an insect infestation, he would stay awake all night to administer Ayurvedic remedies. For him, this was not merely a job, it was an integral part of his very soul. It was the height of summer, and the sun was scorching down relentlessly. From dawn till dusk, Banbay had to water thousands of plants. The earth was baking under the heat, and the water level in the well was steadily dropping. Banbay was now well past 70. And in such blistering heat, hauling heavy buckets of water was becoming an increasingly arduous task for his aging body. Banbay was beginning to feel the strain of exhaustion. Moreover, the annual village fair was scheduled to take place soon, an event deeply intertwined with his cherished memories of the past. He longed to visit the fair in the company of his grandchildren. He thought that if he could take just 2 or 3 days of rest, his body might regain its vigor. Banbay approached the landlord and said,
"Master, I would like to request 3 days of leave."
Sitting on the veranda of the mansion, Arthur smiled gently and replied,
"Banbay, you know that I place my utmost trust in you. If you were to leave, who would water these innocent plants? They would surely wither away from thirst."
Arthur was not a bad man, but he was so deeply attached to his plants that the mere thought of them withering away filled him with dread. He felt that apart from Banbay, no one else could properly shoulder this responsibility. Banbay returned quietly, for he too could not bear to see the plants go thirsty. Images of the fair's vibrant atmosphere and the children's joy danced in his mind, yet the mental picture of the plant's withered state gave him no peace. Sitting in a corner of the garden, Banbay was deep in thought, wrestling with a dilemma. He mused,
"Why not ask our neighbors in the forest for help?"
The animals of the forest were his friends, for he often fed them leftover fruits and grains. He walked over to the old banyan tree near the garden, where a large troop of monkeys lived. Banbay called out to the monkeys' king, Bajrangi. Bajrangi leaped down to meet him. Kaka said,
"My friend, there is a fair in the village tomorrow. Could you and your troop water my plants for just 3 days? In return, I will reward you with heaps of sweet bananas and mangoes."
For the monkeys, this was an exciting proposition. They had always watched Kaka toiling away at his work. King Bajrangi was delighted and replied,
"Friend, go to the fair with a completely carefree mind. We will ensure your garden remains lush and green."
Banbay handed them a stack of buckets. He explained to the monkeys that they were to fetch water from the river bank. The next day, Banbay set off for the fair in high spirits, feeling that his problem had finally been resolved. Meanwhile, back in the garden, the monkeys began their work. They fetched water from the river, but they had no idea how much water each specific plant required. For monkeys are by nature mischievous creatures. Carrying their buckets, they came bounding and frolicking into the garden. Bajrangi Raja offered a peculiar piece of advice.
"Look here, folks, small plants need less water, while large plants need more. But how are we to know just how big a plant is on the inside? Come on, let's uproot every plant and inspect its roots. Whichever has long roots gets more water. Whichever has short roots gets less.
Such was the innocence of the monkeys. They did not realize that the very foundation of life is not meant to be tossed about in the air. Hooting and hollering, all the monkeys began uprooting the plants. The garden, which just moments before had been a place of tranquility, was now filled with shrieks and littered with mounds of soil. Just then, the landlord, Arthur, happened to pass by. He was out for his daily stroll. He watched in horror as the monkeys uprooted the plants right from their roots. At the sight of this scene, his heart sank. The landlord was just about to let out a furious shout, but then he paused. He observed closely and realized that the monkeys were not merely frolicking. Beads of sweat glistened on their brows as they measured the roots with utmost seriousness. He saw that the monkeys were working incredibly hard and were driven by a genuine desire to help the plants. They simply lacked the know-how. Arthur realized his own error. He felt that had he not granted Barnbay leave, Kaka would not have been forced to enlist the aid of these unsuspecting creatures. He immediately intervened and stopped the monkeys.
Wait! My dear friends, wait!
Arthur shouted. The monkeys were startled, but the Zamindar Sahib gently beckoned them closer. He noticed that Bajrangi Raja was holding a small rose sapling in his hands, the roots of which he was stroking with great affection. He explained to the monkeys,
Uprooting the roots kills the plants. Let the roots remain buried in the soil. Simply pour water over them.
The landlord realized that while issuing orders is easy, putting those orders into practice is incredibly difficult. Arthur himself picked up a bucket and, working alongside the monkeys, began watering the plants correctly. The landlord, who had been clad in the finest silks of the mansion, was now covered in mud. He discovered just how exhausting this work truly was. By noon, his back began to ache, and blisters started forming on his hands. He finally grasped the true value of Barnbay's years of tireless dedication. By evening, the garden was thoroughly watered, and not a single plant had perished. Arthur had carefully replanted every one of the uprooted saplings back into the soil. In this manner, the monkeys continued to water the garden for 3 days. When Barnbay returned 3 days later, he was filled with dread. Someone he had met on the way had told him that the monkeys had wreaked havoc in the garden. He feared that the garden might have been completely ruined. However, he found Arthur and the troop of monkeys sitting together, sharing and eating fresh fruit. The sternness that usually marked the Arthur's face was gone, replaced by a newfound radiance. Arthur embraced Barnbay and said,
Forgive me. Yesterday, as I worked alongside these monkeys, I finally realized just how hard you work.
The Zamindar acknowledged that consideration should extend not merely to the work itself, but also to the individual's comfort and needs. He declared,
From now on, you shall take every Sunday off. And in your absence, these monkey friends and I will work together to look after the garden.
That day, Barnbay's hard work finally received the recognition it deserved. Tears of joy welled up in Barnbay's eyes. The Zamindar fed the monkeys a generous supply of bananas and gifted Barnbay a new, comfortable home. Now, Kaka no longer had to undertake the long walk from his distant village. The garden had now become a symbol, not merely of flowers, but of the unbreakable bond of friendship between humans and animals. This story teaches us respect for labor, never deem any task beneath you, and always respect the needs and comfort of those who toil hard. The importance of experience. Good intentions alone are not sufficient. The right technique and practical experience are equally essential, as was evident in the case of the monkeys. Empathy. It is only when we put ourselves in others' shoes and truly feel their struggles that we can evolve into better human beings and effective leaders.
Please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Also press the bell icon.